Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
We have this Father's Day webinar coming up, and it's brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation in partnership with the Compassionate Friends. Well, Heidi, we've got a wonderful guest today. He's one of our Open to Hope writers, and he is also a fabulous author and has written some wonderful books. And on the last slide of our show, you'll be able to see those and learn more about them. But we first met him, Heidi, when he wrote A Room for Two. And it was quite a few years ago, because we've been doing radio for how many years?
We've been doing radio for about 12 years, Mom.
Yeah, and Abel was one of the first people we did shows with, and he wrote a book called A Room for Two, which is a fabulous book, a very sad story about how his wife, who was pregnant, shot herself. And I remember distinctly about him coming to the door and hearing the sound, and what a horrible thing. And Abel has gone on to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books. A Room for Two is his first book, fabulous book. And he's helped talking to people about dating a widower, and he's got all sorts of wonderful dating advices. And he is also a bereaved dad of the baby, and he is a wonderful father now to 7 kids, Heidi.
Do you have 7 kids now, Abel?
Yep, I got 7.
And is that including your daughter that died, or is that?
No, no, 8 if you count her.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, that is incredible. So we want to really talk today with Abel Keogh and have him talk about how you deal with life and go on and do the great things that he's done. And he's got some wonderful ideas for you if you've lost a dad, for you if you're a dad who's lost a child. He's just going to give us some wonderful tips and tools. Well, Abel Keogh, welcome to the
Gloria.
show.
Thanks, Heidi. I'm happy to be here. All right, so we're talking about Father's Day today. It's I think for most people it's a great holiday. You know, I don't know if holiday is the right word. Maybe a celebration. We honor fatherhood and parental bonds, and just the influence that fathers have in our society. But I think for lots of people, it can be a harder day.
Yeah.
If you've either lost children or you've lost your own father, then it can be a day that maybe it's just harder to celebrate that day.
Wow.
So let me tell you a little bit about my first Father's Day. So just a little bit of background. As Gloria said in the introduction, my seventh. A while back, my 7th-month pregnant wife, she took her own life. And again, you can read the details about that in Room for Two. And I think probably the hardest thing about it was that she was pregnant when she did it. I think when people think of people taking their own lives, usually a pregnant woman isn't, they usually don't think of those people taking their own life, but it happened. But I guess I was close enough to it, and we were able to get emergency people there long enough that they were able to deliver my daughter via emergency surgery. And
what's her name, by the way?
Her name was Hope.
Hope.
Right.
So Hope. And that, by the way, that's what my late wife wanted to name her. We were still kind of going over the whole name game thing. We still had I thought we had a while to go, and so when it came time to name her, that's the only name I could think of. That's what my late wife wanted, so that's what I named her. And anyway, so she lived for 9 days, but there was complications, due to her circumstances and the way she came into the world. And so 9 days after she came into the world, I made the decision to take her off life support. And probably the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was probably I still think it as the right choice. So that happened in November. And then, so this would be 6-7 months later, Father's Day came around, and I was actually down in Phoenix. I was visiting a friend down in Phoenix. We were going to see some baseball games. My baseball team was in town, And so he was going to cheer for the Diamondbacks. I was going to cheer for the Tigers, and we were just going to go down and have fun. And to be honest with you, Father's Day was kind of the last thing on my mind. I was just happy to be down there. I was happy to be away from everything, and I was having a great weekend down there with my friend. And then Sunday rolled around, and we decided to go to church in the morning. And again, it was Father's Day, but that didn't, it wasn't clicking with me because I had such a great weekend. And we get to church, and they're passing out the programs and stuff. And on the first thing on the program is Father's Day, and and I'm just like, oh, I don't know, just completely all the fun, all the kind of, all the happiness I had kind of that weekend, just kind of, it was like getting punched in the gut, walking to church, getting punched in the gut. And I just kind of realized it was Father's Day. And, I was like, oh yeah, I'm a dad. And, I kind of had to go off into the bathroom for a second and just kind of compose myself and just kind of reset, I guess. And
how old were you?
at this time I was 27.
Yeah. Wow. And so that first thing was shock. I think that's interesting because I think sometimes we don't recognize what's going to happen. It sneaks up on us, doesn't it, Heidi?
Absolutely, yes. And there's triggers, and you don't know when, like you said, you're going to become very overwhelmed like Abel did.
At the church I was going to, they had a way of recognizing fathers. And, at the end of the service, all the fathers would stand up and they'd pass something out. And my friend kind of looked at me like, what are you going to do? And I couldn't stand up. It just wasn't something that I could do then. And so all my friend did is he just put his arm around me, and that's just what I needed right then at that time. So the first Father's Day, I think if I had maybe been more cognizant that the day was coming, I might have handled it a bit better. But it was just such a surprise, and I was coming off just a great weekend. We had done all this stuff over in Phoenix, and so it was just, I think, just the way it hit me. That's just kind of the way that it was.
Right.
So a year later, you forward on a year later, and by this time I had remarried. And I had been married, I guess, about 4 months at this time.
Wow.
And so this time I did know that the day was coming up. I was keeping track of it a little bit better, and so it wasn't a surprise. But one of the issues that we kind of had is that Julie, who I married, she wasn't quite sure how to handle this day. She recognized me as a father, and she kind of wanted to recognize the day, and I had kind of mixed feelings about what I wanted to do on the day. And she kept asking me, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to go to the cemetery? Do you want to, and I just kept kind of pushing her off and not really giving her an answer. So Father's Day rolled around, and that morning she gave me a small gift. I can't remember what it was, but she gave me a card and a gift, and
Wow.
And just it was just kind of the idea. Just I guess mostly she just wanted me to know that she wanted I guess she was willing to celebrate the day or honor the day however I wanted to, but she wanted me to know that she wanted to recognize me as a father. And
the fact that she wanted to recognize you, and that she was so open about it. This was your, wife that killed herself and basically killed your daughter. It's amazing, given your story, that she was so open. She sounds like an incredible person.
Yeah, she's amazing. I think she handled it well, and I think, and I handled it. I think I was appreciative of what she was trying to do, and I think that's as far as we went. As far as maybe acknowledging a day was probably just was just that gift, and I don't know. There might have been some tears and on my side and stuff, but yeah, it was still kind of a bittersweet day, but it was much better than the first Father's Day. I'll put it that way. You go forward a year later. And this time we had just had Julie and I had just had our first child together, and he was a month old at the time when this Father's Day rolled around. I was happy. It was definitely a day that we acknowledged, and but I guess I was really happy about it. I mean, I think the best part of the day for me was just, you know, being able to was just being able to hold a healthy baby.
Susan says that you're a very brave man to come on and talk about Father's Day now with everything you've been through, which is sweet, Susan.
Yeah.
But she also wanted to know, she has had a young baby die, and she wanted to know if you ever scared about that baby, that it would be all right, or, and, you know, did it bring you back?
Yeah, like during Julie's pregnancy, I don't know if terrified's the word, but I mean, there was times, and it wasn't that I was worried about Julie necessarily, you know, killing herself or anything like that, but I was really worried, I guess, just, you know, what if something happens to the baby? What if there's what if there's a miscarriage? What if, you know, there's just, you know, there's 1,000 things that could go wrong, and most of the time everything's fine. But I guess in my mind, I was playing up the factor of, well, what if something happened? You know, could I handle it? Could I make it through it? And
how did you, what kind of support did you get to get you through that? I mean, it sounds huge, doesn't it, Heidi?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess my biggest and best support was Julie. You know, and to be honest, I kind of feel bad about it because you know it's her first pregnancy, and you know your first pregnancy is special, and you know everybody's all happy for you, and people were that for Julie, but it seemed like a lot of the time she got comments of, well, how's Abel doing? And that was like, that's what people were asking her, you know. It was like, you know, you're pregnant, well, how's Abel doing? They weren't asking how she was doing, they were asking how I was doing. And so I kind of feel bad a little bit that a lot of the attention was focused on me, but I think you know, we just took it one day at a time, and you know, and Julie did a good job just, you know, keeping me updated. I mean, I was going to all the doctor visits with her, because if there's anything wrong, I wanted to know, you know, things like that. But, you know, Julie just, I think it just made it easy that I felt that Julie was really open with me about how the pregnancy was going, how she was feeling, you know, how the baby was doing, you know, hey, the baby's moving, let's feel the baby kind of thing. And so you know, I think she was probably the biggest and best support. I think a lot of people were just kind of on pins and needles, just kind of hoping that everything would work out. Everybody else was.
Were you happy to get past the 7th month? I'm thinking you might have been, that might have, you know, those triggers.
Yeah. I was happy to get past that. And I think it's like, by the time you hit week, I don't know, what is that, 35, 36, generally if you have the baby at that point, it's, you know, it's considered full term and healthy. And so, you know, once we hit that point, I was still, you know, I started to relax a lot more, but, you know, still, you know, there's still the birth and stuff, and it's like, well, what could go wrong?
and also, Abel, there's also the point of holding the baby, and it's so wonderful, but it's bittersweet, because sometimes holding a baby after you've lost the baby brings back the memories of the loss too.
I really tried to keep it separate. I didn't want, you know, you know, especially where Julie had been so good about things, I didn't want Julie to feel that, I don't know, that I was comparing, or, you know, things like that. And I still wanted, it was a struggle of, you know, trying to figure out my emotions, but I didn't want Julie to feel like this was, you know, that I guess I wanted her to be happy and to focus on the baby, and to focus on, you know, this gift of life, and not necessarily what I lost. That makes sense.
I like that.
Yeah.
That you made a conscious effort to do that.
So this is Father's Day now. I have more. So if you go into our front room in our house, we actually have 8 photos of these hands up on our wall in a big circle. And there's Julie made this thing that says, I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but just how special small hands are, and how they grow, you know, and how they grow up fast. So we have these 8 pictures, and there's 6 of them here, but we have 8 pictures around this saying on our front room, and they're all hands of our kids when they were young, and they were babies. And this started when we had kid number 5. We had baby number 5, and then for Christmas one year, Julie gave me this present, which is all these hands of my kids. And if you look in the top left-hand corner, that's actually Hope's hand up there.
Oh, I love that.
Oh my gosh, it is. Oh,
That is really neat.
That's the only picture really of hope in our house, but it's, you know, it's just kind of our way to kind of say we have all 8 kids right there.
Yeah.
And so that's good. So that's kind of our, I don't know, our parent wall.
What a wonderful way to let your other kids know that they had a sister, or they have a sister too.
Yeah. So, yeah. And so Father's Day now, for the most part, it's happy. You know, I mean, I have 7 kids, and, you know, most of them are still small enough that it's like a big thing for them, and they're happy to give dad a present, or, you know, make him something special or whatever. And so it's, you know, it's a fun day, and, you know, but I think there's time during that day where I take a minute or something, and I kind of think of Hope and kind of miss her, but, you know, I know that I'll see her again, and, you know, I kind of move on from there.
So in saying that you'll see her again, one of the things that I assume is that your faith has helped you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's helped me quite a bit, just knowing that, you know, that even though I didn't get a chance to really be a dad in this life, that, you know, I'll have a chance to see her again and be a dad in the next one. If you've lost a child, if you have lost a child, I just think honor the day in the way that makes you feel the most comfortable. You know, if you don't want to do anything, I think that's fine. You know, if you want to do something, you know, I don't know, whatever, release balloons, go to the cemetery, that's fine too. But I think the days are best, you know, it's best to try to celebrate in a way that's positive. So, you know, like, I just have some ideas that you can volunteer at a local organization that had maybe meeting for, you know, you and your child. Like, so if they suffer from some kind of illness or something like that, there's some way you can volunteer your time towards that. You know, perform an act of kindness. And I think the best way, though, is to really share stories and memories of that child. In our case, I've talked a little bit with the older ones, you know, about Hope, and they know they have a half sister that lived for 9 days, and you know, and I guess there's, you know, most of my stories are just holding her and feeling love, but I think that kind of keeps her alive and keeps her in people's hearts and minds.
Wow, Heidi, isn't that fabulous? I mean, I think sometimes we feel like people don't want to hear our stories, and particularly if the stories are down the road, but it's so important, isn't it, Heidi?
Absolutely. And I know that the research supports the fact that kids like hearing stories of the way that people lived. They like hearing positive stories. I think it's more of a problem oftentimes for adults. I'm sure you share your stories with your children, don't you, Abel?
Yeah, I do, and you know, and the older ones have actually read Room for Two and stuff like that.
Gosh,
so you know, I think at least with the older ones, you know, who are old enough to kind of understand and comprehend what happened, they kind of, you know, it's more of a, I don't know, the story's maybe a little more real for them. So here's a picture. This is my grandpa, my father. So my father is still alive. I'm grateful for that. My grandpa passed away probably 3 or 4 years ago now. And he was actually my last grandparent. So I'm grandparentless. But I think, so I just wanted to share some, you know, just some ideas and some tips on how you can, if you have lost a father, I think we're all going to go, or a grandfather. You know, like I said, I haven't lost my dad, but it's, you know, he's getting on there in years, and it's probably just a matter of time before that happens. And we're both really good, and I think my dad especially. I mean, he was. I think I know he took a lot of time off work, and at least, especially during those first few days when I was going to the hospital, he did all the driving. He didn't want me to drive and stuff, and he was just kind of there, you know, the one driving me up there, and probably spending out of everybody the most time at the hospital with me.
I think that men aren't as comfortable, sometimes I'm generalizing, with the emotional piece and the emotional support piece. They're doers. I guess that's how they support people, is through doing things for them.
Mm-hmm. And I was impressed when you talked about your friend on the first Father's Day. Guys out there, human touch is such an important thing when you've had a loss. So ask people to give you a hug.
Talked about telling stories, you know, about children, but I think if you lost a dad, or maybe even if you haven't, you know, sometimes, you know, you're apart by a distance or whatever. But I think really the best way to let people know what kind of father you had is to tell stories about him. One of the best memories I had about my dad, is that, you know, he was always someone who, I mean, he was always willing to stand up and, you know, do the right thing, even if that maybe wasn't the popular thing to do. But I have this memory of him. I was a teenager, and we had gone to see a movie, and we got out of the movie where we were in a mall somewhere, and we got out of the movie. I don't even know what movie it was, but we were walking out of the theater through the mall, and there was this crowd of like 200 people standing around watching there was these two girls fighting. I mean, you know, they're pulling hair, doing all this stuff. I don't know what the fight was. And, we just kind of walked over to see what people were staring at. And you have like all these people standing there, and my dad just kind of jumped in and pulled the girls apart. He was just, that's just kind of the guy he was, or, that's kind of the guy he is. And he's just, everyone's kind of standing there and cheering him on, and he just jumped in the middle and pulled them apart. Yeah, so another great way to maybe honor or remember your dad is to maybe do something that he liked to do. So I think if you have maybe something, maybe a family tradition or something that you and he always did, it's probably a good way to remember, honor your father by doing that. So like, in my mind, my dad he was a big sporting event person. It seems like we always had tickets to college football games or baseball games or something like that. And and that's kind of a tradition I've kept up with my own kids. I think it's just something I grew up doing. So now me and my kids end up going to college football games and baseball games and stuff like that, and just having fun. But I think no matter what it was, if you had a favorite meal, a favorite restaurant, if you like to hike, I mean, if you like to go for drives or whatever, that's kind of a fun way to maybe honor your dad and do it on Father's Day, or to remember him, is to kind of start a tradition, or maybe say, hey, this is something my dad liked to do. Why don't we go out and do this, and do something that he liked to do, and see if you can maybe even start that as a tradition in your own family, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. My dad taught me a lot of sports, and I've certainly enjoyed that and doing some of the things that he did. And I love this cooking idea. I've heard people talk about, having a dinner and bringing the people's favorite dish of their dads. You can have, a potluck and bring favorite dishes.
How do you honor your late wife, or how do you remember her? And, and I kind of make, because I think part of the reason they ask that is, I've occasionally, when the topic comes up, I kind of make a point, well, I don't go to the cemetery. There's things that I don't do that people might interpret as being kind of, things that people normally do to honor someone. And I always tell them that, well, I kind of honor and remember my late wife by being a good husband to my current wife, and being someone that would make my late wife proud. So, in the context of making your father proud, I mean, if you happen to be a dad, I guess you can start out by being a good dad, right? I don't know, whatever that means to you, but you can start out by being a good dad. You can volunteer somewhere, you can help people. There's always, I know that occasionally, I've taken my, like my kids to the old folk home that's in our city, and there's people there that are just old and could use somebody just to talk to.
Absolutely, and people in places like that love seeing children. That's such a gift to bring children into a place like that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I love soup kitchen ideas and doing things like that for people. Somebody just said, Susan just said, what about your late wife's family or her dad? Are you involved with them at all?
So my late wife's father, he passed away, I guess it's been 7 or 8 years ago now. So I honestly don't have a lot of contact with my late wife's family. There was just a lot of tension there, not related to her suicide or anything. It goes beyond that, but yeah, I don't have a lot of. I still keep in contact with a few people, but it's kind of high level, light contact kind of thing. We're friends on Facebook or whatever.
Well, I've got to say, Abel, that the fact that you are interested in making your late wife proud is another testament to you. because she murdered your daughter. I mean, you could look at it like that, and maybe that's harsh, and maybe that's not the way you see it. But I love the way that you are, because it sounds like I don't know if you had to do any forgiveness, but you're not harboring rage or anger. You haven't let this event destroy your life, which is a tribute to you, I think. Because I know there's people out there that are saying, wait a minute, this is a pretty amazing story.
I mean, and there, you know, there was anger. I think, especially maybe the first 6 months, 8 months, there was a lot of anger. But, you know, I realized that in order to remarry and move on and start a new life, you know, there had to be some forgiveness there. And, you know, I'm at peace with it now. And, you know, however it shakes out in the end, it'll shake out. And that's just the way it is.
Well, I think that's an amazing testament to you.
It really is.
Right, Mom? Because and you've been able to fully give to all your children and not be this angry person in your life. You know, it's fabulous.
Well, I think there's a lot to forgiveness and moving on. And I would even add that, you know, if you have, you know, I know that sometimes people have strained relationships with their fathers, and, you know, whether he's living or dead, whether your father is living or dead, I would say if you have that same kind of if you have a strained relationship, you know, maybe Father's Day is a good time to maybe just put it behind you.
I look at your books and I think of your progression going from The Room for Two and then moving on to The Ultimate Dating Guide for Widowers, writing about these things. The Ultimate Dating Guide for Widowers, tell us about that. How has that gone? And
yeah, so that's I think that's probably, out of all my dating guides, it's probably my favorite one. That one's a little bit different than the other ones, but in that guide I talk about stories. I mean, I talk about my own experiences in there, but I talk about stories of famous men who have been widowed and remarried, some successfully, some not successfully. So there's stories of Thomas Edison and Joe Biden and Pierce Brosnan and Paul McCartney in there, and you can kind of read about their story. And what kind of was a catalyst for the book is, you know, is as I've talked to women who are dating widowers and widowers themselves, is I started to spot patterns in behavior. And then I started picking up on, you know, I think it was, I might have been reading Joe Biden's story or something like that. I was one of the people in the book, and I started picking up that they had the same kind of patterns. And I thought that, you know, at least for men who have lost their wife, it's just kind of interesting to go in there and kind of see what these people have done in order to have successful second marriages, and the mistakes people have made and kind of screwed up their marriages. So that's kind of what the Ultimate Dating Guide is. It's a collection of stories of these famous people, and I've thrown my own experience in there as well, but just kind of what they've gone through, what they lost, and how they either put it together or tried to put it together and failed. So lots of lessons learned in there. Dating a widower, that's really what. Again, this is going back to patterns, and that book's really written for women who are dating or in various relationship stages with widowers. But it's coming back to, again, identifying patterns and really being able to identify if the widower you're dating is ready to move on, if he's actually ready to move on, or if he's kind of using you as a placeholder. Dating a widower, marrying a widower, is life with a widower. I mean, there are books out there about dating a widowed man, but most of them are written from the point of view of a female. And so what's made these books stand out, and the reason, they've continued to sell and do well, is that it's coming from a male point of view. So it's talking, it's talking from someone who's been there, done that, but who can kind of maybe say, look, this is why guys act this is why they're acting the way that they're acting. This is why they're behaving the way that they're behaving.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show. We want to wish you all a happy Father's Day, right, everyone?
Absolutely.
And Heidi and I always want to remind you, and I know Abel does too, that if you've had a loss, we invite you to visit us at Open to Hope, and we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own, and God bless.